Well, Mark, two things caught my eye. One was the beautiful lines of this car, and the other is the word Zephyr. Tell us a little bit about the history of this vehicle.
Well, the car was built for a guy in Christchurch called Pat Hoare in 1949 originally, and from there it was developed, went through a number of people's hands. It started out actually with a Singer 9 engine in it, right up to what you see it now with this Mark III Zephyr engine in it. And the lines you see it as now is built by a guy called Ron Rutherford, who was quite a famous New Zealand Canterbury racing driver. And he liked the shape of what was a car called the 250F Maserati, so that's why he built it into this shape. It looks very much like the 250F Maserati, except obviously it doesn't have quite the same heritage as that car, but is a very famous car in Canterbury and New Zealand.
So it doesn't really resemble the original model, it's morphed into several shapes and sizes?
It has over the years, absolutely. This is the way you see it now is around about the late 50s, 60s, and we haven't changed it much since then. It's had a little bit of tinkering, and I've accidentally hit the wall in it, so it's been rebuilt, and it's great job done of it as well. So it's looking really good at the moment. Yeah.
Did you buy it in race condition, ready to go?
Yes. Well, these cars are never in race condition ready to go. They're always broken somewhere, but yeah, that's how I supposedly bought it at the start, absolutely. Yep.
So what are some of the challenges of ownership of a car of this ilk?
Okay, obviously the spare parts, getting spare parts for them sometimes. I've been buying them up over years. I've got most of the Mark III gearboxes around New Zealand in my shed, plus it's got a Skoda diff in it, so I've got a lot of Skoda diff parts. But that's a little bit of getting more of a challenge every day now, because those parts are just getting harder and harder to get. Some parts I've had to have made now as well, so it can be a bit of a struggle, but you can make everything these days, so you can keep them on the track and keep them going. Definitely.
I always ask about the tyres, because they're always different for every car.
Yeah.
Do you have a stack of those in your back shed?
I've just bought another set of tyres out of England, along with a lot of the guys. What we try and do is get together and buy a whole group of tyres so that they cost us a little bit less. But we are racing on what was a traditional tyre, Dunlop racing tyres. As I said, we just buy a whole stack of them, and then I've got a spare set in my shed just waiting to go on.
Would a set last you the summer circuit?
Depends on how fast and how hard you race, It'll last me a couple, where some of them it might last them a season.
What about some of the challenges associated with driving it? What tracks around the South Island, for instance, do you prefer?
I love coming down here to Tiratonga. It's a great track. It's probably, well, as you probably guys all know down here, it's one of the last tracks that's more or less the same as it was many, many years ago. So it's a great track to race on. I like it, especially when the weather's good. Yesterday was terrible, today, beautiful. So this is a great track, but I like racing at all the tracks in the South Island. They're all run by clubs, and so everybody sort of pitches in and helps out, and so it's a good feeling at most of the tracks.
And the handling of it in the corners at speed, how does that feel like?
Okay, well, I had a guy who raced a Formula Holden years ago walk up to the side of the car, and I don't know if you can say this on here, but he said, you've got to have big ones to race a car like this. So, you're changing the gear between your legs and steering and braking at the same time. It is a bit of a challenge, but once you get used to it, it's your car, you know what you're doing, and so it's just what you do.
I assume it's quite a friendly competitive class. Everyone respects each other's vehicles.
Absolutely, yes it is. Yeah, we've formed a little team with a lot of us called the New Zealand Grand Prix Specials team, and we're sort of trying to get a little bit more leverage to try and get a few more cars out. There's a lot of these cars that sit in people's garages that are not used, and they sit there for years and years until the old guys that own them die or whatever, and then eventually they come out. But we want to see more and more of them on the track if we can get them to release them, if you want.
They attract the interest, don't they? I mean, you can't walk past these cars and not ask some questions.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they're the base of New Zealand motorsport, from where New Zealand motorsport is now. All these guys had these specials built, so that they could race because they couldn't afford European cars, Yeah.
What fuel does it run on? Just normal?
Avgas. Yeah.
So what about plans for other vehicles, or is this your one and only passion?
No, this is my only passion. I've thought about going to something else, but for me, I'm the only one who can own this car.
You're the only one who can drive it.
Yeah. I could go and buy a Formula Ford or an MG or something like that, but there's only one person who can own this car and only one person who can drive it. So that's it for me at the moment.
Well, Alistair, I've been spending a bit of time with the Hillman Imp and the Sunbeam people, telling us what wonderful cars they were, how superior they are to Minis, but let's put the record straight. These are just simply wonderful inventions.
Yeah, the Mini was just a total... Well, it took a few years to be successful, but once it did and started to perform well in motorsport, it really just raised its profile, and yeah, they were very successful. They won all sorts of things all over the world, you know, Monte Carlo, Bathurst. I think in 1966, Mini took 8 out of the top 9 places at Bathurst, and that was the last year that cars had to be basically available in the showroom. They weren't specially built for the race. So that was something quite good, but yeah, just a lot of fun. They're a little more than a go-kart and just a thrill to drive and hammer around the track if you've still got a bit of life left in you, if you're not too old.
The key was their simplicity, wasn't it? Simple fittings and simple layout.
Yeah, the East-West engine was probably the breakthrough. Isagoni, who designed the Mini, wasn't allowed a new engine or gearbox. He had to utilise what they had. So they took what started life as an old Austin A30 engine and bought it out. And in fact, early on, they reduced the size of the engine from 950, I think, back to 850 because Isagoni felt that it was too powerful. So they reduced it back to that 850, and that's what was commonly available here in New Zealand for a start. The Coopers came on stream in '62 and started to win races, and the rest is history, really. They just carried on and on.
The Mini Cooper S and now, this is a top range model, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, here in Southland, there weren't actually a lot of them here, and they were really expensive. I think they were about £1,100 from memory, and I think you could buy a Mark III Zephyr for less than that, brand new. And as young fellas, we all wanted one, but the reality is not many of us had the money to do that. So yeah, the S was the penultimate model really, and that was available in 3 sizes: 970cc, which brought it in under the 1,000, a 1071, which was replaced by the 1275.
What are we in now?
This engine is a 1275 that's been bought out to 1340, and it's possible to get them right out to 1450 or even a bit bigger than that.
Is it the original engine that was in this car?
No, not many of them would be on the track. And the later 1300 engine, which was actually a 1275, was homologated and allowed to run in place of the original engine. They're fundamentally the same, yeah.
You're just looking around the car itself, that looks like an original dashboard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what I've tried to present here is a car that was typical of what we had in the 60s, you know, a car that you drove to work and went out socialising in, and on perhaps Sunday afternoon you'd pop out to the track here and have a bit of fun with it. You'd take the hubcaps off and tape the headlights up, and that's what I wanted to do. I mean, the car would be faster if I took all the seats out and, you know, stripped it all back and lost a bit of weight myself. Wouldn't hurt. And, you know, but I just want that look, you know, I want the road car look. And actually this car, even though it hasn't got a warrant of fitness, it is quite, you know, it would be able to get one if was certified, yeah.
Minis are always a bit like a TARDIS, aren't they? Because when you look on the outside, you think, how do you get any people in there at all? And we're quite comfortable. There's room in the back for a couple of others.
They're amazing. My wife has got one of the later BMW cars, and this car would have just as much room in it. A mate of mine's got an Anglia, and the Mini I don't think's got any less room inside it, and yet the Anglia's physically quite a bit bigger car, you know.